A very warm welcome to all of you and to our distinguished discussants joining us today for the launch of our Anti-Fake News Lawfare tracker. My research partners, Janjira Sombatpoonsiri, Andreas Ufen, and our supportive team at the German Institute for Global and Area Studies, invite you all to explore our Anti-Fake News Lawfare tracker, and we hope it will be of immense value to the research community and to the civil society at large, working every day to counter disinformation and legal repression. When we speak of anti-fake news lawfare, what do we mean? We speak about the different types of legal measures that have been used by illiberal and autocratic governments across the world to suppress and silence critics and opponents from different countries across the world in the guise of fighting fake news. And this is where the origin story of our tracker comes in. In the past few years, especially since COVID, what Janjira, Andreas, and I, as well as our local partners, witnessed was an uptick in the cases filed by governments against journalists, activists, and academics across the world to censor criticism and control information. And this happened particularly more so in South and Southeast Asia. This is the region we focus on. And we found that most of these governments were emboldened by declining platform accountability and, in some cases, active collusion by certain social media platforms. And therefore, based on extensive desk, computational, and field research, we, along with our local partners and all those frontline activists, journalists, and academics who participated in our workshops, try to understand this unfolding threat landscape. And therefore, this tracker represents three aspects of our research. The first aspect is research as risk mapping and record keeping. What do we mean by that? That is, we try to find the patterns and trends of anti-fake news lawfare in 6 countries of South and Southeast Asia: India, Indonesia, Bangladesh, Malaysia, the Philippines, and Thailand, to draw comparative and general lessons. And in this, we hope our research also doubles up as an accountability watchdog mechanism for platforms and governments who are prone towards such lawfare. The second is research for civil society resilience. Our tracker is not just for showing you what the threat is, but also human and inspiring stories of pushback by people who have faced this kind of lawfare. Janjira will explain more this later on. And since this is a whole of the society problem, the third aspect of our research is research as multi-stakeholder capacity building and collaboration. And this tracker is the live demo of how academics can collaborate with practitioners at the front lines, working to protect our democratic and digital rights. And therefore, here's a huge shout out to our local partners, SAFEnet from Indonesia, Vera Files from the Philippines, Penang Institute from Malaysia, Chulalongkorn University from Thailand, Confluence Media Limited from India, and Digitally Right Limited from Bangladesh. And we also a huge shout out to all the lawyers, to all the academics and activists who participated in our workshop and enriched our tracker with their local on the ground insights and information. In the next 1 hour, we invite you on this journey where first Janjira will demonstrate how this tracker works. And then we will hear from our discussants, Nenden Arumsekar, the Executive Director of SAFEnet Indonesia. Welcome. To Anissa Drabu. Anissa Drabu is the founding member and the Chief Impact and Strategy Officer at Confluence Media Limited India, our local partner also like SAFEnet. And also a warm welcome to Akara Chaimani Karaket, who's a human rights lawyer from the Thai Lawyers from Human Rights. And we'll hear from them how this tracker can be integrated with the work they do. Then Andreas will mention a bit about our data methodology and how we went about it. Finally, we will open the floor for Q&A. We welcome you to type in your questions in the chat box. And if it is all right with you, please tell us where you are coming from and if you have any observations in the chat box. And now I pass the mic to Janjira.
Thank you, Sangeeta, for your introduction. Let me share the tracker. Somehow that page is gone. Sorry, everyone. I think the page doesn't show on my screen here. Let me do something a bit strange. You will see our face. Do you see the tracker right now? Sangeeta, can you?
Yes, we do, Janjira.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Perfect. Sorry about this technical hiccup. So without further ado, let me delve right into what's in our tracker and how you can make the best use of that. As Sangeeta has just said that this is a labor of love. We spend a few years collecting data, and this is ways in which we present the data. So I would encourage you to log on later to play around, try using it. There are other information that I won't have enough time to highlight in this short presentation, but I encourage you to use the tracker yourself later. Now, today I want to highlight three sort of types of data that we have collected and put it on this tracker. Number one is statistical data, which is basically the core of the tracker. This is the legal case of what we identify as AFNL, or cases of anti-fake news lawfare. Now, you can do a lot of things on this page. This is a fun page for data nerds, but also for human rights advocates, for journalists who have done data-driven advocacy. So I want to sort of bring to light two key features of this data page. Number one is data visualization. So the uniqueness of our database is that for different fields of data shown here, we visualize it. For example, this is temporal data. This is the dates of AFNL cases reported. And then we have location map, locational data of the cases report. And if you hover your mouse on the map, you can click on the country that you're particularly interested in. And what you see is the sort of individual cases from that particular country. So I encourage you to scroll down and have a good look at these different types of data. What I also want to highlight is the platforms. What do we mean by this? When civil society actors post on online platforms, right? We want to understand which platform that they post their information that mostly lead to the allegations of sharing false information, so on and so forth. And so this type of information allows you to understand the kind of platform that makes civil society actors most vulnerable. And then last but not least, as I said, we have a lot of data here. I encourage you to play around with that. Now, we also analyze words used in the allegations. What do we mean by this? the premise of our project is that the allegations of, against civil society of sharing false information online is often associated with other, sometimes even more serious allegations, such as defamation, sedition, or terrorism, right? So we want to understand the words used in the allegation and associated words that we see in these allegations. Now, the second feature is this. On your right-hand side, this is the filters where you can customize data visualization by choosing specific time frame and even specific country, right? And the data on your left-hand side will be visualized accordingly. So now this is statistical data. As Sangeeta has said, we want to also humanize, so to speak, those targeted by this kind of law. And therefore, we spend months doing field research, collecting human stories, right? So the page, if you click on stories, you will see the page of targets of AFNL. We feature 2 cases per country. In some countries, the 2 cases are severe cases where civil society actors are heavily targeted. In other cases, is a resilient story in which civil society actors could manage to push back against the lawfare. Now, because the 6 countries we study have varying political contexts, we also provide you with basically information on regime types, on the legal frameworks implemented and used to charge civil society actors. So if you click on the countries tab here, it would take you to the information on the country, and you can click on the country and you will see descriptive information on political context. And this page also links with the stories of AFNL target, where you can also explore human stories that I showed before from that particular country. Now, last but not least, this is the third type of information we provide here. This is publications where you can download. How can you do this? First, we would ask you to sign up on our tracker, and then you have to put in email information and create a password. And then once your membership is approved, then you can log in, submit this email and password information, and then you can download these publications. I think that as we speak, we have an uploaded codebook and dataset. It will be available shortly, but right now, I think, or even soon, a handbook of pushback strategies would be uploaded, and we have published policy papers regarding this subject where you can access. So I will stop here and let my colleagues take over.
Thank you, Janjira. And again, we welcome you to try it and send us your suggestions. As we talk also, please go ahead and check out the website fakenewslawfare.com. And now I would like to speak to our first local partner, Nenden Arung from SAFEnet, Indonesia. You have been doing excellent work when it comes to documenting such violations and collaborations in Southeast Asia. I saw that right from 2013, you have been doing it, and then it built up in 2019. And you have been present from the get-go with the way we conceptualized and did this and throughout the process. And we learned together. That was the wonderful part of it. I want to know from you, Nenden, like, how do you see this tracker helping with the work that you do for digital rights advocacy and activism?
Okay, thank you, Sangeeta, and congratulations actually for all the GIGA team. So this is really incredible because I know like it's not only about the tracker, but on how we develop the process of the development is really useful as well for us SAFEnet in Indonesia, because we know that in the context of the advocacy, policy advocacy, data is something that really helpful and very important. That's why in SAFEnet we also doing this monitoring and documentation. And then when this tracker is here, I mean, like it's really help us as well to not only advocating the issue on the in the country area only in Indonesia, but on how we can also see the pattern in the region, in the Southeast Asia and in the Southeast Asia, in the South Asia. So that's what at least what we think in the first our first impression when you all like proposing the idea on doing this tracker. So this really great and important on how this data can also strengthening our advocacy as a data-driven advocacy, because that's something that really fundamental for us when we are doing this policy advocacy. And then, as I mentioned earlier, on how we can also see the trend. There's a trend analysis as well on how what is actually happening in the other country, because in Southeast Asia, for example, that we have, I mean, like our government have a tendency to copy each other, what happened in the other country. It sometimes like a copy and then like implement in our country. So when we know and when we can read the pattern, the trend, it's really helpful for us to at least to mitigate what will happen maybe in the future, in our country. So the trend analysis is really great. And then and because I know that there's also a features on the story behind the case, it's something that also really inspired, I mean, like inspiring, on how we can learn from the cases, from the other cases in the different country, on how we can learn on how the civil society doing the advocacy on those cases. And then maybe we can also learn and like get some valuable opportunity to learn by the other experience as well. So that's the thing that I think will really helpful on our works in Indonesia and the Southeast Asia. And of course, I mean, like as you mentioned earlier on how we develop this tracker is not only only technical on how we build this, but on how we can also learn from each other, and it's really strengthening our regional solidarity. So that's the thing that also really important that comes in my mind when we talk about this tracker. So maybe that's for me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nandan, because this is what we were looking forward, that cross sub-regional collaboration where because autocratic governments, as you rightly said, they plagiarize each other, but we can learn from each other and build our collaborative knowledge sharing platform. So I pass to Anisa, who's another local partner who has been there with us from the get-go and from whom we learned a lot about specifically, like from Nandan, we learned about digital rights activism, and from Anisa about what threats journalists and media activists and all of them face. So Anisa, coming to you, what has firstly been the takeaways from this tracker for you, since you've been closely associated with it? And what do you see it can be helpful in this cross Southeast Asia and South Asia kind of a bridgehead venture?
So thank you and congratulations. I'm so glad we are here that, we've come and that tracker is getting launched. So congratulations to everyone, all the partners. Um, we are a bunch of storytellers and journalists and writers, creators, and fake news for us is a reality that we deal with, on a day-to-day basis. And this is something we can also see, how the countries that we are living in, for example, the global south, like I'm in India right now, we really, Confluence Media really aimed at focusing on storytelling, telling truth, amplifying voices from the margins, really speaking about the stories that are really not told. That was the mission with which we started. And for us, what the biggest thing was, how fake news is becoming such a reality, how to counter. We can really look at how media has been, just playing, just acting. If you look at the press freedom index, I think most of the countries that are represented here, or the country partners really, would be, out of 200, maybe, 160, 170, and that sort of rank, the lowest sort of tailing, in press freedom index. We know that this is also becoming difficult for journalists because a lot of them are trying to become de facto, themselves fact checkers. And therefore, a lot of pushback is coming on them. They do not have the resources and do not have the platforms where they can actually, really see that this is actually, an important sort of a thing. They are also facing a lot of pushback in that sense. Now we know that fact when it comes to fake news, it's also controlled by powerful influencers, and therefore it becomes even more difficult to, basically, counter that. And that is something that is a day-to-day reality for us. We really wanted to focus, I really want to take a minute to talk about why we wanted to focus on Global South, because this is a region where we have about 85% of the global population. And this is also a region where population growth is really high, job opportunities are really less. We talk of general literacy, that is low. Forget about, digital literacy. So there is a huge divide in that sense that really, really feel the digital infrastructure, the technology is not something which is really, growing at the pace at the rate at which we are facing the fake news coming our way. So I feel that, for us to really deal with something of that sort is becoming difficult. And we know that when we are, when there is lack of technology, when there is lack of this education, what happens is that we are also not able to take decisions. People are not able to get proper information, and instead of information, you're getting a lot of misinformation and a lot of disinformation. And we know in today's world, the most expensive resource is information. It's not oil or anything else. So it is data, it is information, which is basically guiding a lot of these decisions that people are taking. And these are poor decisions, these are not well-informed decisions, and they have repercussions on these people, 85% of the community, 85% of the world population we're talking about. And we know disinformation thrives when narratives are monopolized. And that is something that, and countering it would often require us, tools that will democratize storytelling and amplify diverse voices. And therefore, in that sense, I feel the tracker really is trying to take a lot of local uh, realities in mind. It is trying to, and I feel like once we've started, I hope, in local languages, in different sort of ways we can try to have these collaborations in which local voices and different languages can also be coming up. So I really feel it is something which is like a beginning. It's a tool which is just trying to give us a way to equip journalists and storytellers in a way to not only detect fake news, but it's also understanding, the deeper consequences of content, and how you consume and how you create that content, and what is the repercussion of something of that sort. And at the core of it, I think the tracker, it really embodies it really embodies our commitment of truth telling. And this is a step really towards empowering ourselves, and just to be more intentional and just to be more aware of the content that we are creating and that we are consuming. It's also a crucial resource, I feel, tool, the tracker that we've developed is also a crucial resource to counter propaganda, of course, rebuild trust in information systems. And by making the tracker more robust, we are really trying to say that, these are the systems that can be trusted. Imagine a journalist or a storyteller sitting in Zimbabwe, or somebody sitting in Malawi or something, and knows that, this is a tool that can really help. And what I feel I've learned is that no matter how maybe Nenden is talking, or a Karachai or anybody talking, I don't think the problems are really different. We are really connected at the core, because of the problems that we are facing together, whether as advocates, human rights lawyers, whether as journalists. These are the same problems, because we don't know how to really counter this. So I really feel it's not just about fighting fake news, really, in that sense, but it's deep faith in safeguarding the future and expression, in the global South by increasing South-South cooperation and alliance in that sense.
Excellent, Anisa. This is what motivates us every day, that how can collective action be concretized through this more mindful knowledge consumption, information consumption, and how are we all tied together through this collective fate, where the digital public sphere, which used to be a bastion of free flow of information and knowledge exchange, is being uh, taken away from us by illiberal governments and platforms who are working together with them. And this, your whole idea about this mindful information, and we are content creators, but we should not be dubbed as fake news peddlers, because then we come into the eye of repressive governments. Brings me to Akara Chai, because I was really inspired, again, just like the work Nenden does and Anisa does, but more of the legal aid work that you have been doing since 2014, post haiku. Janjira has told us so much about the work that you have been doing, and we saw it live in Bangkok when we went and met, how you are giving legal aid to so many citizens who are being deprived of their civil and political rights, because we use the social media because that's the platform for democratic communications and participations. But lawfare is something very technical, and we don't have the technical capabilities to navigate that threat landscape, which is exploited to the hilt by autocratic governments. And this is where you all come in, the Thai lawyer for human rights. I have been seeing how you all come in and you offer these legal aid. So can you elaborate a bit more about how our tracker can have real life impact, and how this also can be integrated with already the website and work you are doing to provide legal aid to the targets of autocratic government?
Yep, of course. Thank you so much. And again, congratulations to the GIGA team. The tracker is very, very nice, and I'm sure it will be extremely useful. At Thai Lawyers for Human Rights, as you mentioned, we provide a lot of legal aid to a lot of people prosecuted for expressing their opinions, most of them online. And so we do a lot of work in courtroom, but that does not mean that we can ignore the importance of documentation work, knowing the data, knowing the trends. And I think that's where the tracker really comes in. I have been scrolling through the tracker several times actually, using the Thailand function. So I filter Thailand out, and there's a lot of information that prior to looking at this tracker, I did not know. Or I didn't know the extent of the issue. For example, I think what we've seen in the past few years is that a lot of people have been expressing their opinions online, especially in 2020 and 2021, the COVID lockdown years, basically. And there's an issue, and there's a question as to which platform is most problematic in terms of platform that people use and then get targeted. Looking at the tracker, you realize that almost 50% of the cases, we are talking about Facebook, and then Twitter, and then other platforms. But again, the tracker is extremely useful in helping identify trends and identifying the side of the problems. In this case, Facebook, we know that when people use Facebook, that heightens their risk of getting arrested or charged or prosecuted. So that's extremely useful in identifying trends. But secondly, I think it's extremely useful in creating awareness. I think one of the goals of our organization is not just to provide legal aid, but in the future, to hopefully be able to fight for some sort of reforms, legislative reforms, policy reforms. And in order to do that, there's no denying that information, data, are an integral part in pushing for those agenda. You can't really push for reforms without the informational foundation that in this case can partly be contributed to by the tracker. We can use the data from the tracker to show policy makers, lawmakers, the issues that we have been experiencing in the past few years. So in that sense, that awareness, that data is extremely useful. And I particularly like how the information in the tracker is organized in such a comprehensible, easily digestible manner. You can scroll through very quickly and you will be able to learn a lot of stuff in such a short period of time. And I think the ability of the tracker to tell sometimes complicated stories in a very easily digestible diagram, graph, charts, that's extremely useful. Because no matter how, I suppose, no matter how hard we work, if people don't know what it is we're doing, if they can't understand it, if they can't imagine it, then the power of our message is not as strong. But when the information is organized in such an easily digestible manner on the tracker, I think that's really useful in helping amplify the issues that, in this case, we're experiencing in Thailand, but not only Thailand, in other countries as well.
Thank you, Akarchai, because that is, I think, should be our bumper sticker philosophy that the more simplified information we give, the more impact it has. Like they say, brevity is the soul of wit, and probably brevity is the soul of impact. Right. And this brings us also to our data, because what you rightly said is that it has been a constant struggle for Janjira, Andreas, our local partners, and all the people, research assistants. And huge shout out to all our research assistants. You're all acknowledged and mentioned in the work in the website tracker. So even if you contributed for a day or for a month, that was huge debt of gratitude to you. So data is very important. Our information is important, and our information hinges our credibility. And this is where I bring in Andreas, because it wasn't very easy for us to deal with different countries, and there were data accessibility challenges. And therefore, Andreas, could you say a bit more about how we dealt with this data problem and our methodology?
Yes, sure. Thanks very much for your input, Anisa, Nenden, and Akarachai. I think it will help us a lot. The local partners actually have helped us a lot during the last 2 years. I would like to add some thoughts on the database, especially with respect to the 2 countries I'm working on, Indonesia and Malaysia. In the past 2 years, we gathered many cases, but especially in Indonesia and Malaysia, a lot of them did not fully fit into our defining criteria. Often the repressive laws did not refer to fake news or false information, something like that. Or the people charged did not belong to the 3 groups we were focusing on: journalists, scientists, civil society activists. Sometimes fake news have really been spread, and there were real cases of, for example, slander or defamation. Yeah, one might say that countries indeed need content regulations in order to prevent the spreading of misinformation and disinformation in the name of freedom of expression. And there's a fine line between necessary and merely oppressive laws. And we also had to look at this. Having said this, another, one might say, problem of data gathering concerns difficulties in getting information, for example, on police investigations, on court procedures. And it is quite difficult to check what exactly has happened and who exactly have been the involved actors. Because of this, we think it is important to expand the database to an extent. This is what we want to do in the next 2 to 3 years. With reference to Indonesia and Malaysia, for example, this means looking at lawfare more generally. How do these countries use or misuse laws to restrict freedom of expression and to put pressure on the 3 groups? We are covering journalists, scientists, and civil society activists. What other laws that do not expressly mention the countering of fake news as their rationale are used. The legitimation of repressive laws is often not based on AFN measures, but have to do with, for example, in Malaysia, the 3 Rs, that is race, religion, and royalty, or in Indonesia with religion and some other things. We think the database has to include selected other cases with reform to blasphemy, defamation, lese majesty, etc. With reference to comparing cases in these countries we are covering, we think that a more comprehensive database will make it possible to systematically compare within and between countries. We can then look at specific patterns of lawfare over time and identify country-specific patterns, and whether there are tendencies in the region to learn from each other, what Nandan already mentioned. This pertains to the governments involved, but of course also to civil societies with respect to pushback strategies. In Indonesia, it will be interesting to see what happens with reference to the new criminal code under the new president, Prabowo Subianto, or in Malaysia, how the reform government, I hope it's a reform government, under Anwar Ibrahim will guarantee or enhance freedom of expression. All this will be useful to examine digital authoritarian in South and Southeast Asia. Generally, there is an erosion of rational public discourses, not only in this region, but maybe globally, by populists and by governments engaging in hybrid warfare. There's an accelerating impact of AI with unpredictable consequences. Social media are today often not a tool to fight authoritarianism, but they are rather captured by oligarchies and repressive state apparatuses. The project tries to illuminate how all this affects politics in South and Southeast Asia in terms of freedom of expression. It looks at civic spaces and the repertoire of more or less sophisticated means of digital authoritarianism, and it will focus specifically on lawfare. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Andreas. So I would welcome all the audience members to please ask questions. You have experts here who are working at the front lines, so it will be a good opportunity. As well as I see lots of members in the audience who are themselves frontline warriors. So please do give us your observations and opinions. So I come to the second round of questions starting with Nandan. As Andrea set the stage for the new order of threats that is coming in, I think there is if I'm missing a Q&A, is it coming? Okay. Right. So we find the threat of generative AI, which did not materialize last year, but now it seems with the agentic AI, the fear mongering has started. But with that, there are also new threats in the landscape. With, as Andreas mentioned, the new law that is looming in the horizon. For Indonesia, what is the specific challenge that you think we should look at as we try to scale up the tracker and try to make it more reflective of the different sorts of laws that are used against civil society members?
Okay, thank you, Sangeeta. Yeah, as Andres mentioned earlier, actually, in Indonesia, mostly, even though it's not like not specifically using the anti-fake news laws, but mostly a lot of like criminalization against activists, for example, is mostly using the other articles that actually is quite relevant. I mean, like defamation, hate speech and the other problematic articles in Indonesia. And actually, our new IT law, the revised IT law, is actually already include the new articles related to the false information. They not use the fake news terms, but the false information, and that is actually based on our observation. In 1 year implementation, actually, there's a lot of like people that allegedly like accused that they are violated this article. So maybe that's something that we can update on the database on how the false information article is actually really related and used on the general election last year actually. So a lot of like political actors that allegedly accused by this article. So that's something that maybe some development that can be updated on the trackers, and also about the new penal code that will be implemented, fully implemented next year. So that's something that we can update on that. And then actually in Indonesia, interestingly, there's not only about the law, but how the other regulation is actually also weaponized against the activists and journalists. For example, there's a lot of like ministerial regulation or the president decree that actually related to this the false information, even though they are not use the term, yeah. But I think it's something that we can look for. We can be observe this trend, and then I don't know. Yeah, let's see if the code book or the indicators how what kind of like cases that can be involved in these trackers. Maybe there's something we can see. Maybe I don't know. Maybe there's will be some new. I don't know how to say some features, for example, not related to the laws, but it's I mean like it's quite similar cases related to the anti-fake news law, kind of like that. So yeah, because some country is quite dynamics on how the government weaponize the regulation, the laws, and then yeah, I think that's something can be captured in the next improvement, yeah, for the tracker as well. So yeah, that's the thing, and some updates, yeah, from Indonesia as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nandan, for that guidance, because this is what we want to take it to the next level. So I go to Anisa because Nandan has spoken about new kind of developments that are taking place and how the code book, where we can improve through new indicators given the new developments. But with you, I want to speak more about the cross collaboration between the organizations in South and Southeast Asia, and how the tracker can be a platform to take that cross collaboration forward.
Sorry, I'm on mute. Thank you. So I think what Nandan just mentioned that, in terms of anti-fake news law, there is nothing like that that exists today. I think in most of the countries, we are all finding ourselves, basically saying fake news. Sometimes, it's terrors, it's something else in India. Under those laws, I think people are trying to talk about this. But I think I want to talk about, since you asked about to Nandan and how the tracker can help in future in scaling up. I think tracker really is a beginning, but scaling it up is essential to truly challenge the growing tide of digital authoritarianism. And because we've seen that worldwide, basically, I think authoritarian regimes, they have really weaponized technology to manipulate information, censor dissent, and spread disinformation just to maintain power. And specifically, again, I'm saying in Global South, between these countries where digital literacy remains low, such tactics can really have catastrophic consequences. So I think for the next level, we will have to, we do envision, I think one of the things between countries, integrating advanced AI and machine learning also to identify disinformation patterns in real time, particularly, I think, in local languages and dialects that are often overlooked by existing tools. There's so many. I think and that's where the actual impact or effect of it will be seen. And something at Confluence we've started doing, because we have something as a tech platform, which we are calling a marketplace, where we are trying to take, which is basically a digital forensic center, where we're trying to train journalists and build their capacities, and trying to put in data with a lot of authenticity, lot of authentic checks and everything. I think also collaboration will be key, partnering with grassroots organizations, civil society, investigative journalists to ground the technology in the lived experiences of people, I think is going to be a key thing. Capacity building to empower a lot of local journalists to critically evaluate the content, to critically evaluate what is the kind of content they're making. And because I think technologically we are really advancing a lot in this, I think fake news, every time there's a new software, it's just going to another level. So I think expanding partnerships across Global South will really be, and really urgent and important. Also, I think the tracker can really serve as a foundation for building a cross-border coalition against digital repression, really a South-South alliance that not only shares tools and resources, but also stands as sort of a united front to challenge those who seek to manipulate and control through disinformation. So we remain committed to creating impactful solutions to tackle not just symptoms, but also the roots of disinformation. And I think overall, then the tracker becomes really more than a technological solution, more than a technological tool. It's also a call to action for global cooperation in the fight for truth, justice, and human rights and human justice.
Thank you, Anisa. We will take it that this is a global call to action for our rights. And there's a question from the chat from Alia. And Alia, thank you so much. It's good to have a digital rights researcher like you find this tracker useful. Alia's question is, can the public submit updates to the database, or is it exclusively maintained by the GIGA team? Janjira, would you like to answer this?
Yes, I can. Thanks so much, Alia, for this great question. I think for now that we still rely on local researchers to help us collect data. And this is mainly because we have a scope of data that we like to include in our database. And so we need to train local researchers and basically assign them a task to collect data that we want. So now in the future, it might be possible to sort of crowdsource data from the public, but I think that also depends on how our next phase develops and how we can scale up the project. Thank you.
Yeah, but
thank you, Janjira.
But you may send us, of course, information. If you have some interesting data, you can send us, and then we will look at it, and of course we will use it. That would be very helpful. Yeah.
Yes, so what Alia, just to summarize, Janjira is absolutely right. We try to, since data is on it hinges our credibility, we do try to vet data and try to train. There is a knowledge exchange involved, train local researchers on data gathering. So it's a two-way process. And as Andrea said, we definitely would welcome digital rights researchers to give us, because you already have a level of training, to give us data and updates if you can. That would be most appreciated. Yes, and now coming to Akarashai, I would like to ask you more about the legal aspect of collaboration, because as Nandan laid out the threat landscape, Anisa spoke about the collaborative infrastructure that can grow and be a collective call to action. But to concretize this into, since this has a very strong legal element, and we try to see this cross often we see such discussions being very siloed discussions where only lawyers are talking amongst themselves, or only rights activists are talking about themselves, or only journalists are talking amongst themselves. Where Janjira, Andreas, and I tried to do is we tried to bring cross-field collaboration because, as we said from beginning, this is a whole of the society problem. So in this sense, how do you see the viability of more of legal, because you are the backbone providing the technical help? How do you see this going into the future as a joint petition filing? For example, we had heard about one of our local partners and field researchers from Bangladesh had spoken about joint petition. Someone from Philippines had said, how do you see that working? Because I see the collective strength of asking for platform accountability can arise when we marshal our forces and pool in our collective strengths. Can you give us some sort of a concrete form in which it can take?
Yep, of course. It's interesting that you mentioned that as well, because the first thing I look at on the tracker is the laws in different countries used to crack down on anti-fake news, just to see the legal landscape in respective countries. And I think one observation I make is the fact that many times neutral sounding laws are being used to criminalize what the authorities deem to be anti-fake news. So if you just look at the text on its surface only, you look at the name of the law only, you would not think that it could be used for very worrying purposes, like cracking down on journalist speech or activist speech, for instance. So I think the one concrete thing that this tracker is doing is to really help create awareness about the legal landscape, about the specific laws that are used. For instance, when I look at Thailand, when I see Computers Crime Act, initially it was designed to deal with system threats like hacking or threats to the computer system. So it has a very legitimate origin story. But through this tracker, you realize, wait a second, this law is being used against journalists. It's being used against activists, not against threats that the lawmakers originally talked about when drafting the law. And I think that is probably true in other countries as well. And so I think building on top of that, I think I think proposals about joint petition or joint statement to really look at the application of these laws is something that is very interesting, because I think especially in the age of social media and AI era, I think a lot of countries are looking at new legislation. How do we regulate AI? How do we regulate speeches on the internet? For instance, with X or formerly Twitter, for instance, I think many countries are looking at how to navigate this previously uncharted territory. So I think this tracker allows me in Thailand to understand a bit more about Indonesia, about India, about other countries, and vice versa. And I think in the future, when we help look at what the standards ought to be, the legal standards ought to be when regulating this sphere, I think this tracker will be extremely useful.
Thank you so much, Akashai. A lot. We will get back to you and pick your brains further later. Now I would like to also go back to the chat because we have two more questions. One is from Purabi Das about how this is how this tracker would be important for fake news lawfare, especially during elections. But just to give a clarification, we are not fighting fake news, but we are fighting the misuse of fake news laws against fact checkers. And that brings me to the question by is it Purple Romero? So based on the question, based on the data you have gathered, were there incidents or cases when anti-fake news laws have been used against fact checkers themselves? Thanks. So yes, so I can start with it and then I will lay it out. Yes, it has happened in India and Bangladesh, the countries that I was looking at. It has been extensively used to discredit fact checkers, since they are the first person, the first line of defense against the flood of top-down disinformation. So yes, we did. I will now ask Janjira. Yes, Janjira, go ahead.
Oh no, I really want to second your observations, Sangeeta, that I mean, we actually have part of the data that documents this kind of AFNL, like this kind of fake news lawfare during election campaigns. And I mean, in countries like Thailand and the Philippines, this happens. So we find trends where the accusation of journalists or even opposition activists for spreading false information is used as a weapon to basically shut them down, or even during for their job for election monitoring, for example, right? So in the case of Thailand, the Election Commission back in 2019 even alleged civil society activists of spreading false information just because they did their job in checking the Election Commission. And I think that's a good case for us to sort of take forward how we put data that we collect and document in political context like elections. I believe that we have a data section on allegations during COVID as well.
So yes, so we just have 2-3 minutes left before, if anyone has any last minute comments to make or observations to make, please make that, because we would like to really hear. But this is, as I said, this is a continuing conversation that we'll be having. Right. So if there are no more questions, firstly, thank you all of you for joining us today, for taking your precious time. And I know many of our people in the audience are also extremely busy individuals. I can recognize many of you there, and it was really, really an honor that you joined us during this launch of this Anti-Fake News Lawfare Tracker. And our heartfelt thanks to Nenden, to Andreas, to Akarachai, to Anisa. Sorry, Andreas, you were there in the screen. No, thanks to you. Okay, thanks to you. Right. Many thanks for joining us today and for being with us from the beginning. And to all our local partners, again, we hope to continue this collaboration, as well as we hope to create a platform where you collaborate with each other, because that is ultimately our whole point, that there should not be no via media, but a kind of, we can facilitate the process of cross-regional collaboration as well as create this information tool. So I would like to thank all of you for joining us today. Please visit the tracker, explore it, play with it, discover how it can help you in your own work. Let us know, like Alia, yes, definitely. Please let us know how it can, be improved upon, where we can take it further, given that this is a very dynamic threat landscape. And though I'll be concluding the conversation now with the launch, please continue this and spread this message in your social media handles with the hashtag fake news lawfare. So again, with the hashtag fake news lawfare, please continue the conversation so that we get to know what you're thinking and we can spread this message far and wide. Till then, let's together work, share knowledge, share information, and try to create a better informed ourselves and more informed society and empowered society. Thank you and have a very good day.